Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome back to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared.
Thank you for joining us again. So this week we're talking about combating those clients that have unreasonable expectations that when you get in this conflict, when you get head-to-head, we are going to roll down our list of the top 4 reasons that we get in arguments with clients and jobs go sideways.
So that's a frustrating point.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. We've done podcasts before about how to avoid that and how to set expectations and that sort of thing. But today we're talking about when you get in these situations. We're going to talk about 4 specific situations that we have seen over and over again. You've done everything right.
Yeah,
what do
you've
you do
done
now?
all the things, and you're still dealing with a client who's unreasonable.
That's right. So we've talked 70 times over our podcast about our client engagement agreement.
The
and
CEA.
That's where we're starting today. We're not going to dive in. We've talked about it enough. But if you are new to listening, the client engagement agreement, or our CEA, is an 8-page document that we use. We give to our coaching clients. It is a document worth – we had a coaching client once stand up and say, I would pay $10,000 for this document.
Yeah.
Because the document is what I expect out of the client, and they see it and sign off before we start, what they should expect out of us, how payment terms work, when we do this happens, and it lays every single expectation that you're going to have on the job out in front. And clients love it because for them – great, I understand my role and your role in this. And it also will lower their expectations sometimes of like, oh, you're not going to be here 7 days a week. Okay, I didn't know that. Oh, Clark, I can't call you at Sunday night at 10 p.m. because I wanted to chat. I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? And so they go through and they start lowering expectations of other things, raising expectations, and getting where we have the exact same expectation of what's going to happen and occur on the job site.
Well, and the reality is that this business is difficult enough as it is, with just variables that you have with crews and supply chain and cost of things, and it's difficult enough as is. If you go into a job that is that difficult with somebody who has their own set of expectations that haven't been set, you're just set up for failure. It's going to happen every single time. You're going to be frustrated, and your client's going to be frustrated, and your subs are going to be frustrated at the end of every single job. So regardless of whether you are on with us and you're one of our coaching alliance clients and you have a CEA or not, you have got to have a expectation setting meeting with every one of your clients at the beginning if you want for the job to go well.
Yep.
You just have to do it.
And there's never going to be a better time than before the job starts because at that point, it's all reasonable asks.
Right.
When you're 3 months into the project, there's no more saying, hey, actually, I don't want you to talk to my crews anymore. And the client's like, well, that's different. Why now? Well, what's going on? You know, and there's conflict there.
Yeah,
So
you can't draw a line in the middle of the job that you're going to point to.
Yep.
You have to have previously drawn the line of like, here is the line of out of bounds. Yeah. And then when you're in the job, you can point back to it. But I can't hold somebody accountable to something that I haven't previously spelled out the expectation. And most of the time, most of the things that happen on job sites are circumvented by having that meeting and having that document. You can circumvent the majority of the issues that are going to happen on job sites. But sometimes it goes beyond that.
Yep. And this podcast today has the baseline that you're using a CEA. That you're sitting down with every client and laying out those expectations because that is all of your weapons when things go wrong.
Yeah.
That CEA is your weapon to defend yourself against an unreasonable client when things go wrong. So what we're covering today here are the top 4 things that go wrong on jobs. Here's how to utilize your weapons in defending yourself, and ending with keeping the 2 most important things on your side, which is your reputation and cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to walk through today. So baseline CEA, if you need one, contact us. If you want to talk through it or see ours, let us know. But getting rolling into this, really this whole thing, any sort of conflict that you have with a customer is going to be one of 2 reasons. Either you missed the mark, right?
Legitimately missed something.
I didn't do something right. I've dropped the ball. Something happened wrong. And so they lost trust in me. Or they had an expectation that they thought you missed the ball.
Yeah.
Either way, something happened that they didn't expect and they don't like.
Right.
Right? Outside of the very, very small client that's just trying to get you to do work and then not return your calls, which is very, very rare. You usually push them to that spot.
Yeah.
So that being said, when we're going into this, and before we cover the 4 different areas that we're talking about, let's lay out exactly how we need to have the mindset. And no matter what area we have an issue with, how do we execute
to engage in these
recovery?
next steps? You've got to be set in these. You got to have this type of mindset.
Yep. So first off, what I want to do, the very first thing to start avoiding these type of customers and to get ahead of the curve before things get unreasonable, I am going to confront any feelings. Right? If I have feelings that I'm like this guy, or I sense that my customer is like
agitated,
why are they talking to me that way? Why are they acting this way? Maybe that's just how they are. Maybe that's who they are. But I'm going to confront it because it seems like they have an issue. Maybe they don't. If they don't have an issue, they're like, "Oh, great, Clark, thanks for the communication." If they do have an issue, they're like, "Oh, great, you noticed. Let's have a conversation."
Yeah, well, and this is the reason, when I was running project managers, one of the things that I told every single one of them is the most important phone call that you need to make is the one that you don't want to make.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's something's off in the ethos, right? Your little spidey sense or construction spidey sense is going off. You know that there's, I know if I make this phone call, they're going to such and such.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to have to whatever. But if you don't execute on that,
it snowballs.
It's just going to snowball.
Yep.
It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Yep. And I personally, when I was running jobs, love to have like a quarter of the way through, a third of the way through, hey,
pulse check.
Let's tell me how this is going. Give me the good and the bad. What would you like better from me, my crews? What are we killing it at?
Yeah.
Help me understand that stuff. And you're going to hear stuff you had no clue what they were thinking. And that allows you to reset those expectations at that time.
Well, and that's such a great point because it can just take a couple of tweaks of calibration of the way that you're doing things.
Yep.
You're like, you know what? I really wish that I got that email from your guys on Monday versus Friday.
Yep.
Because it would or I wish they would tell me more about what's coming up that week and some more details so I can plan better.
I wish you could walk the job site with me every once in a while. Yeah, remember we talked about this. I'm there every Monday. I would love, why don't we set up next Monday to walk? That's a great, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't realize you didn't understand that I want you there on Monday, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it allows you to clear the air or point back to your CEA and say, well, that's why we do it this way. I can adjust how I'm doing things, but this is our process that I can't adjust. So let's try to meet in the middle somewhere.
Well, and even if their answer is, you know what, I mean, everything's great, everything's going fine, to place a phone call, whether you are the manager placing phone calls to clients, or you're the project manager placing phone calls to your client, it is not a phone call to, hey, what color paint did you want to use? When are you going to? It's not a I need something type of phone call. It's a hey, I just want to check in on you. I want to make sure that you're as happy as I feel like you are. Are there things that I can't see that you're experiencing that I if there are, I want to address them?
Yep. It shows self-awareness to them. It shows that you are willing to change and learn if you're missing the mark. It really is a trust builder. So going from there, if there is conflict, if there is this client's mad, if the client's issue, whatever it is, there's really 3 things that I want to coach you on. Number 1, curiosity, not conflict. We did a whole podcast on this. Go back and look for the curiosity versus conflict podcast. In that podcast, we talk about asking the same question 2 different ways. And most guys shoot off with a conflict statement. Right. It is a, well, you just keep doing this, this, and this. You keep talking to my crews. Why aren't you paying me? Right. And as opposed to the curiosity, you can ask the same questions where you're disarming them. Say, hey, I'm a little confused. Help me understand because I'm sure I'm missing something here. We had talked about you not talking to my crews, but you keep reaching out to George and talking with him about what's going on there. And then they're going to say, well, I asked you about it and you didn't do anything, so I talked to George. Yeah. Great. Well, when did you ask me about it? Help me fix what I'm doing on my side, because if you were asking me, I don't remember you asked me, let's change that communication point. And so it's curiosity. It's not like, you never asked me to do that. That doesn't help at all, right? That's reactive. That is low IQ mentality to just react and get angry.
Well, and one thing like in that spot is being able to ask the question like, What is it about the way that this is going that's made you feel like you need to protect yourself by doing this, by not paying, by holding? What is it about this process that made you feel that way?
Yeah.
Right? It's identifying that there's an issue with them. That like, hey, this is an issue, and I don't want you to feel that way. So what is it about me and the process that's caused you to feel that way? It's disarming to go at somebody that way versus being like, you're being this and that's not right.
Yeah. Well,
right?
it's I'm not going to let your perception name what reality is, but for you, that is reality.
Correct.
Right. And so I'm going to say, hey, what's your perception, because your reality is wrong. Now, I'm not going to say that, but that's what I'm trying to get at, of what perception did they have to think that they shouldn't trust me? And I'm going to speak to that, and I'm going to build the trust in that spot.
Right.
So with conflict, the three things that I said I want you to have with these conversations. Number one, curiosity, not conflict. Number two, which it goes hand in hand with that, you need to be the calmest heartbeat in the room. If you have a project manager and a homeowner, if you're just you and the homeowner, if it's you and a crew, leadership is being the calmest heartbeat in the room, because I'm trying to gather facts. I'm trying to be curious. I'm trying to make a non-emotional but the best decision for the both of us.
Right.
Right. And so that goes along with number three. I'm not going to take abuse, and I'm going to create space when there's a heated exchange or some sort of accusations, or and I'm starting to feel, I'm about to explode. I'm going to create that space in that moment. And God's honest truth, I've been on a phone call with someone, and in the middle of them talking, I've said, hey, pause for a second. We're going nowhere, and honestly, I'm getting angry, and I shouldn't be getting angry. Can I come by the house tomorrow and we can talk then?
Yeah.
And they're like, fine, that's great. Let's talk then.
Yeah.
Face-to-face is better than the phone. Face-to-face is way better than emails.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Having that conversation. But I'm going to create space, because if you're starting to talk abusive towards me, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to roll over and just let you kick me. But at the same time, I'm still going to be the calmest heartbeat.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the control and the power by having the calm heartbeat. I'm curious about it. And hey, you can't call me names. We're not going there. You can't call my guys names. We're not going there. And if you're going to act like that, then we're going to call a timeout. I'm going to.
Well, and human nature, understanding human nature is a big piece of this, because when most people, when they have been done wrong, taken advantage of, hurt, caused pain, whatever it is, the reaction is to do that same thing to the other person.
Yep.
It's just human nature. It's how people act.
I'll show you.
Yep. Right? And we do it too.
Yeah.
The client sends us an email accusing us of being dishonest, not a good person, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people go back in just guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Well, you're a such and such. Well, where are you getting?
Yeah.
Do you, and it's being the calmest heartbeat is backing up and saying, you know what, I know who I am. I know the quality of what this is, and I know my intent. My intent is to make money on this job, but also treat this client well.
Yeah.
Right? And, de-escalate yourself. Right.
Well,
and realize that that's your job as the project manager or general contractor that's been paid and contracted with to do this work. You're the leader.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to lead from a place of calm and authority.
I think, I have a lot of flaws when I was the general manager, but I think one of the things that I was great at, that I helped our new general manager start shifting his mind around, is that I don't care about justice for you.
Right.
I don't care about you getting what you deserve. I don't care that you're a crazy person.
Right.
You being crazy and calling me names, I'm like, oh, you don't know me. You don't know who I am. You don't know me at all. You've got an experience of a crew that painted the wrong room, and now you're mad and calling me names. That's a you problem. I wonder who hurt you when you were a kid, right? Like, that's my mindset towar's people when they're angry with me.
Right.
I'm like, oh, like, it's hard to get under my skin.
Yeah.
It happens.
Oh, yeah.
But in those moments, it's like, oh, that's a him problem. I bet he's got some issues, man.
Yeah.
And so that helps me in my mentality to let it roll off my back, in terms of like, hey, if you have an issue with me, that's your issue, and I'm here to help. I don't care about you getting justice, and all I care about is my reputation, making money, and treating people well.
Right.
And if you feel like you weren't treated well, I'm fine, because I feel like I did everything right, and I'm here to have a conversation to fix that if you think I haven't.
Yeah.
Right. And so having that mentality, it's very hard for a lot of people, but trying to shift into that of, you're rubber, I'm rubber, you're glue,
Yeah.
right? Like the child line that we always used to say as kids, but it's true. It's like this person is literally yelling because their house is torn up and we painted the wrong wall. Anything they say to me isn't what they feel. It's
Right.
just emotions treating them.
Well,
So,
and one thing that I'll say about that is a great place to implement this and practice the skill is when you're engaging with your vendors, your subcontractors.
for sure.
Right? It's a different experience because you're in charge, you have the money, and you're paying them.
Yep.
But it's still the same situation, right? They get heated, they get frustrated, they get whatever, and you need to learn the skill of implementing. I'm going to negotiate and work this conversation from a place of calm,
Yep.
right? Try it out, use it there, right? If you're the typical person that your sub comes to you and he's pissed and frustrated, and then you just scream and put him in his place. All right, learn the skill, implement it differently.
Yep.
I promise your result's going to be better, and you're also going to learn how to implement this when it comes to your clients.
and it boils over into your personal life.
That's right.
Right. So, okay. So last part of this before we get into the 4 different conflict areas.
If you've got everything in place, you've got a CEA, all the stuff, you've pointed back, you've tried to de-escalate it from that point, and it's still not working.
Yep.
It might need to go to this next spot.
Yep. Either way, we're going to this spot. Some are kind of a minor meeting and some are a major meeting.
Right.
But we call it our relaunch meeting. And
Yeah.
what this is, a role playing with Jared. If me and Jared were in conflict and he was my client, and I've been curious, he's just pissed. He doesn't like what's going on. He's not happy with the results. We have to have a relaunch meeting. And I sit down and I say, okay, I know all of the issues that you have. Here is what we're doing to alleviate those issues, and here are the stuff that we have to agree to disagree on.
Right.
With that being said, we need to be able to start a whole new job with you starting today to get my guys back out there and to be able to have to continue a relationship. You need to have trust in me that I'm going to do the right thing and that I'm on your side, and I need to have trust in you that you're not going to be slowing us down and trying to throw grenades at us in every turn.
Yeah.
And I want that trust mutually. And if we can get to a spot where we can have this conversation and come to a conclusion and put this behind us, let's rock and roll. And
Right.
if not, let's figure out a way to end the job now, and you can hire someone else to finish it.
And the way that I typically engage, the initial conversation of talking to a client of that we need to do this, most of the time it's like, look, we're at a
Impasse.
impasse. That's the word I was looking for. I was going to say bypass, and that was not going to work. We're at an impasse, right? And I've been doing this business for a long time, and my desire is that you have a great experience with this job. And I know that you're frustrated about that, but from my experience, if we just keep going and trying to force this to happen, you're not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy. It's just going to go worse and worse.
We've read this book before.
We've been down this road a lot.
Yep.
So what we do in that space is that we're going to step away from the job, and we're going to get to a neutral spot where we can sit at a table and grieve, air the grievances.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the problems. Here's the issues. You've said this, and we're not there to scream and holler and whatever. We need to come to a place where we can relaunch this in a better place where there is a giving of mutual trust. We need to get to that space, and if we can't get there, this job is going to go just worse.
Yeah.
It's not. So can we do that? Yeah. Okay. Fine. Whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's stating the intent, the purpose, the reason. We've read this book before, and it's just not going to go well if we can't get back on the same page.
Yeah. Yep. So let's go through our 4 different areas of conflict, and we're going to kind of implement what we just said of how to deal with these through the lens of this conversation and the relaunch meeting. So the very first one that we're going to cover is death by punch list.
Yeah.
This is where a lot of conflict comes in, right? So the death by punch list with a client, there's really 2 different types of death by punch list. The first is I'm going to walk into the property, I do the punch list, you're happy, great, and then you call me back a week later, hey, I need you to do this. All right, we'll get out there and get that fixed. 7 calls later, 3
You're
weeks
still going
later, I've spent an extra $3,000 on this job by sending people back to fix stuff. I've wasted my time. I can't get crews on the next job because it's the over and over again.
Right.
That type of endless punch list what we have and what we've talked about in previous podcasts is a final walk paperwork. And on that final walk, I'm not going to go into the whole thing about it. It's where I get them to sign off on one final punch and get a full, robust list of everything that needs to get finished. And then I go back and walk them through that list. And anything beyond that is warranty work. I need to get paid. But if it's something breaks beyond that, then I'll come back and fix it.
Right.
And so it allows us to have an objective to complete, and that you've agreed, if you complete these things, I will give you the final check and we can walk away. That way there's not like, oh, I just saw this paint drip 2 weeks later. Well, if you didn't see it on the walk and for the last 2 weeks, that's not our problem.
Well, and our CEA at the beginning, before we started work, there's a specific section in there that talks about the final walk punch list, what it is, how it functions, the expectation of when it's complete, so it's clear and it's understood.
The other final punch issue that we run into is
my favorite.
You walk in to do a final walk with the customer, and there's 800 pieces of blue tape on the walls, ceilings, trim, floors, countertop,
floors,
tile. And they are, you walk in thinking they want me to rip everything out and redo this whole house. That's not
do the whole renovation over again.
Right. And so that is a little more out of control, right? The first one is in control of this is what we're doing, this is how we get it finished.
Right.
This one is, okay, they have expectations of perfection, and I'm renovating an 80-year-old house.
Yeah.
So let's have this conversation. And so,
or they're at that agitated spot,
Yeah.
and I haven't worked to de-escalate that, and they're literally putting tape on the wall. I'll get this daggum, and they're just trying to gig you.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the results and how to combat that of they don't like the product that was there. So that's number 4, but that we'll talk about in a little bit. But with this punch list, I'm going to look through, and I guarantee you in those 800, there's probably 20 to 30 that are legitimate.
Yeah.
Right, and so I'm going to say, oh, let me take a look at this. What happened? And they're like, wow, just being detailed like you asked me to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk through and start looking at it, asking questions about this, but I'm not going to start fixing anything. When I come in and see 800 pieces of tape, I am not fixing. I am not bringing crews back. I am going to figure out how to go to the front, the first one that we talked about. I need a list that you can sign off on that I can take pictures of and say this is done.
Right.
And it's not just everywhere where there's blue tape, because anything we do is going to cause more blue tape, and it's just an endless hole.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to, it's going to be a lot of conflict usually, but I'm going to talk with the client and say, hey, listen, I want to walk through this because some of this stuff is industry standard and some of this stuff was previously on the walls or on the whatever it was that we're not warranting because it's not our work that was done wrong. It was the original to the house. And some of this is industry standard. And you're right, some of this stuff is stuff that we need to fix. And when I see this much tape, it makes me feel like you're unreasonable, and I know you're not unreasonable. So let's go through and reasonably look at the things that we did that was wrong and the things that are just kind of industry standard or original that we're not going to warranty.
Yeah.
Is that
well,
fair?
because you want to understand, if somebody puts 60 pieces of tape on one wall that you painted, you need to understand, okay, what's your expectation here?
Yeah.
Because you and I both know that that's a little unreasonable.
Yep.
What happened?
Yep.
Right? How did you end up with that many pieces of tape on there? Was there something that you were expecting and you got it differently? And so you need to find some clarity on why did they go through and put this many freaking pieces of tape
Usually
on the wall?
when we're at that spot, we've lost trust already. They are being jerks because they're trying to stick it to us.
Yeah.
And it's either that or they are a person that will never be satisfied.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to feel that way either way.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they're just sticking it to you. And so what I'm trying to come to is a reasonable list that we can actually execute to get us out of there. And if we can't get to that spot, I'm now exiting. And I'm saying, listen, you have $1,500 left to pay us on the final invoice. I'm going to let you keep that and hire someone to fix this stuff because I think we are in a disagreement on what's reasonable and not reasonable.
That's right. Yeah.
And again, we're going to talk about this on number 2, but if they owe you $100,000 and you have a not invoiced weekly,
they got you leveraged.
They got you leveraged. So financial leverage is what's going to kill you because I got to come out and hit all 800 pieces of tape because I need that $100,000.
Yeah.
I want my final walk and the work that is left to do to be the only amount of money that they owe me. Right. I've got 10% of the paint left that we're doing a final walk on. Well, they should have already paid 90% of the work because that's been completed, right? And so I can walk away from $1,500 worth of paint just to not deal with this because I don't have 4 weeks to go
I
back
can't
and
walk
forth.
away from $100,000.
Yeah. And so we'll write up an agreement. We'll say, hey, listen, and in that agreement, we'll talk about there's no slander on either side publicly. That way they can't write negative reviews, and we're gonna let you have your $1,500.
Yeah.
They're gonna go get a quote for $5,000 to repaint the whole house, and you're saying, I'm not paying that. This is what we're offering. And it's a difficult situation, but we're pointing back to the original agreement. We're pointing back to industry standard, and we're coming to a resolution before we continue working. Because a lot of times it's just get out here and get it done, and then we'll talk about it.
But you also have to remember calmest heartbeat in the room.
Yep, you're a negotiator. You aren't.
But if you walk into a house that you've spent all this time and you've worked with the crews and you know they did good work, and you walk in and there's 800 pieces of tape, you're going to escalate.
Yeah.
And so you got to back that away because your end goal is exit. Yep. And the higher the more agitation you cause, the more unlikely an exit is.
That's very. You need to be a negotiator, not a defense lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not trying to prove why they're wrong. I'm trying to negotiate to a spot that they will be happy.
That's right.
I don't need to prove anything. I know what industry standard is. I do this day in and day out. This is the first time you've renovated your house.
Right.
I'm not going to say that out loud, but I'm going to negotiate to get you to a happy spot as opposed to show you why you're dumb and wrong.
Right.
All right. So that's number one, dealing with death by punch list. The second issue that we often see with clients is going to be money held hostage.
Yeah.
This happens all the time. This happens beginning, middle, and end of the job. The further you go through the job, the greater the chance that someone's holding money hostage.
Right.
So there's really two different ways that people hold money hostage. The first one is, I'm going to pay you when X is done.
They dictate to you when they're going to pay you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will release that money if you come back and do this. I will give you that cash as soon as this, and this is done.
Yeah.
And the way we combat that is we invoice by line item and percent complete.
Right.
And so that way I'm only invoicing what I can verify and stand on site and say, I
This is
invoiced
done.
you 50% of the paint because look, we primed the walls, we put the first coat, and we just got to do a second coat and we're done. So we're more than 50%. I only invoice 50%. Do you agree with that? Right. And so I'm not invoicing by milestone. I'm not saying, hey, once we get the demo, I need another $50,000. Once we get through putting cabinets in, I need a $20,000 check, because that will be held hostage every single time. Because it's like, yeah, I know we're done with demo, but you didn't haul it off. Well, haul off is at the end with whatever it is, right? And so they will catch you if there's milestones, because the milestones don't capture everything, and they don't know what is and isn't included in that milestone. So we're itemizing our invoices using the ProStruct 360 software. You can select different line items and invoice percentages per line item and say, hey, today, this week, you owe me $9,864 because that's the amount of work that we've done, and that's what I'm paying the guys for completing that work. Let's walk it. Again, we talked about this in the CEA. I want you to weekly look at the invoice as I'm invoicing for that work, and that work is signed off on as good to go. Right. And so that's the I'll pay you when is gone. Because when I invoice that and say, yeah, I see that you've completed that, but I want the paint to be at 100% before I pay it. That wasn't part of the agreement. The agreement was we were going to invoice weekly, right? And I want to pay the guys, and they're not showing up Monday unless I pay them. So you need to pay us. Yeah.
Well, and in the CEA, I like the car metaphor for what a renovations looks like, and in the CEA, one of the things that I like to always talk about is we're providing the direction, we're driving to where we're going, but your job is to put the fuel in the car so that the car can keep going. I don't have a reserves of all this different money. Your money is what keeps your job moving forward.
Just like I won't spend your money on someone else's job, I'm not going to spend someone else's money on your job to keep it going.
That's right.
Your money funds your job.
I have that meeting with them on the front end and say, look, here's the deal. Like if you don't pay me because you're frustrated, or you don't pay me because your funds got tied up or whatever, there is a spot where I have to say, okay, when you get me a check, I will have my guys back out there. Right? It's not because I'm agitated. It's not because I'm gigging you and I'm forcing you into something. It is the reality of how this works. If I don't have gas in the car, I can't make it move. I can sit in the driver's seat and turn the wheel, but I can't make it move. You have to pay me. And so the first line of defense for this scenario is actually implementing that
Well-
and saying, all right, guys, my guys are not going to be there on Monday. I understand that you've got some money tied up. No problem. When when you get me a check, I'll be able to pay the guys and make sure that they get back out there.
Yeah.
If that thing happens a second time, we've got a bigger issue. And I think it moves into your next, we got to pause. We need to sit down. We need to have a relaunch about money.
Yep. And those expectations of I'm not going to start the next week unless I get paid for this week.
Yeah.
Those are set at the CEA, not to beat a dead horse.
Correct.
And so if I sit down with you and say, hey, just so you know, before we start this job, I need to get paid weekly, bi-weekly, whenever I do it. And if I don't get that payment for what we agreed is completed, I'm not coming back the next day on Monday because I'm not guaranteed the money and I got to pay the crew for the week that they did the work.
Right.
And that's reasonable to you. But if I don't say that and we come Friday and say, hey, I need a check, and you say, oh crap, I got to move some money around. And I say, well, we're not coming back.
Yeah.
Holy cow, the
Oh,
conflict there of like, you're not coming back? What do you and you've lost that trust.
Now you're using the fact that I'm disheveled in my house in this renovation as holding me hostage, that now I'm going to be stuck in it unless you're forcing me to give you money that I don't agree I owe.
That's right. So if I can say, hey, remember we talked about this on the front end. This is how our cash flow works. We pay our crews the same day that you're paying us for the work signed off on. And you say, oh yeah, we did talk about that.
Right.
So the second way that people hold money hostage is ghosting you. And again, if you invoice the way that we suggest and push, weekly invoicing, if someone ghosts you in the middle of the job, at the end of whatever it is, I'm not owed $10,000 or $100,000.
Right.
I'm owed no more than $10,000 usually in a week's worth of work, because especially materials I'm getting up
Which
front.
it would hurt to walk away from, but it's not going to cripple you.
Well, and you can pause and you can go after it, and you can handle a $10,000 inflow or lack of money for a short term until you get that money. I'm not walking away from 10 grand, but $100 grand that I thought I was going to get and I don't get is now going to cause my entire company to shut down.
Yeah.
Right? I don't that money I need for this other job and this job and this, and I need payroll and right. And so if you're invoicing weekly, incrementally throughout the job, anytime someone ghosts you and doesn't get back to you and they went to the hospital, or oh sorry, I had a sick mother, I had to go to Florida and I just got crazy, that's fine. Your job paused, just so you know, I'm got to pull the guys off and you're getting late fees like we talked about. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want that to happen. But if you can't get us funds, I don't know how we can continue working.
Right.
So that's that conversation of not getting too far over leveraged on money owed to you, as well as having that communication and not being scared to pull guys off of a job.
Yeah. Well, and it's also if somebody's ghosting you like that, you have got to spend the time to go find them and talk to them. And because if we're not in communication over this job, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
I can go through and execute everything and get it done. The problem is that I need you to be a part of this to make sure I'm driving the car, but you're helping me navigate. Yeah. So if you're ghosting me and I can't get in touch with you and there's money that's owed or whatever, we're placing phone calls, we're emailing, we're driving out to the house, because it has to happen to be able to re-engage and find the ability to, like, why did you ghost me? What's going on? How do we get re-engaged so that we can execute this work?
You catch more bears with honey than vinegar.
Yeah.
And in these situations, all you want to do is call them up and cuss them out and threaten them that they owe you money. And that is only going to
compound
push them further away. So what I stick with the curiosity, and you are going to be their advocate no matter how they've treated you. And you are going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, I know things are crazy. I don't know what's going on with you. Just let me know so I can plan accordingly. They're getting guys back out there or pulling them off. If I don't hear from you, I'm assuming the worst. I'm guessing that's not what's happening. All of those type of lines really keep the communication open. You'll get a text message back. Hey, so sorry, in hospital with my wife. I'll call you tomorrow. Great. Okay, well, we'll pull off, and once we talk tomorrow, we'll get a game plan together. Yeah. Right? Whatever it is, I'm assuming the best in that person, because assuming the worst is only going to push them away.
Right.
All right. So that, again, is the relaunch meeting, having that and saying, hey, can we get back onto the weekly pay for us to continue? I feel like some trust has been broken. You probably feel like trust has been broken in terms of us not doing what we say we're going to do. How are we going forward?
Right.
All right. Number 3 of the 4. We have crew, timeline, and job activity conflict. So when a customer, a lot of times towards the end of a job, we'll have a customer say, not a lot of times, but if this happens, after the job is done, hey, I don't like the way that this hardwood stair was stained and it needs to be restained. That y'all did all the hardwoods, right? Mm-hmm. And I say, great, let me get my guy out there if that's part of our punch list. And then they'll say, but I really didn't like the guy doing it. I want someone else to do it. Mm-hmm. For us, we put this in our CEA. I am a contractor. I am not a hardwood refinisher. So for me, I've paid the guy that you signed off on when you paid us to do that hardwood. And I've got a contract with him to allow him to warranty that work. You don't have to be there if there's an issue with you and him. I will meet him there and make sure it gets done. But I have to honor my contract to him just like you have to honor your contract to us.
Right.
In terms of I have to give him an ability and a chance to warranty the work because I've already paid him. To get someone else out there, I've got to pay another $500, $600, $700 to a different company to come out, figure out the stain color, do all that stuff. And so if you want to pay for someone else to come out there, I'm fine with it. But for us, per our contract, I have to give him ability to warranty the work that I've already paid him for. Right. So that's the first with crews. The second one, timeline conflict. Hey, this job is a month late.
Yep.
Your job as the project manager is to notify when things are going late. And if you've missed the ball on that one, again, it's either I missed the ball or you thought I missed the ball.
Right.
If I missed the ball on telling you that your timeline is gone, then I say, you are so right. Let me show you some change orders that happened. Remember we did this. Remember this happened. Remember that delivery got delayed because you didn't make the payment. Remember this happened. Right. Again, those are things I should have communicated that we were losing time on the timeline and I didn't. So that is 100% on me. Let me put together a Gantt chart and show you. Or the other side of it, you have an expectation, though I have done my part. I can say, well, Jared, remember I sent you that email and I said we've added 4 days onto the timeline because this happened.
Yeah.
This other email said a month or 2 weeks were added on. And this other email, and so the Gantt chart that I ended up sending you 2 weeks ago has this current updated timeline.
And a lot of places where that happens is they start the job and the client spells out, I'm good with this, but I've got to have this done.
Moving in February 1st.
Or Christmas is on its way, right? Yeah. And I want this done the week before Christmas. That way I can get everything set up because I'm having family come over. And then you get okay, great, no problem. Then you get into the duration of the job. You've done your due diligence and sent them emails, told them about, hey, this is going to delay, but they didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we're getting down to close to Christmas time, and they're like, there's no way they're going to get done. Like, yeah, I told you I wasn't going to get done by Christmas.
Yeah. I would like to put in the notes of that job the expectation that they want to move in before Christmas. Right? Whatever there's an expectation of timeline on it, I want to have a note of that so I can say that's not going to happen. Hey, client, 3 weeks before, that's not going to happen.
Right.
As opposed to 2 days before.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing with conflict on the job activity, you get cruise timeline and job activity. What I mean by job activity is they want the house perfectly clean at the end of the day. So they're upset because you guys leave it looking like a pigsty. It's on me if my crew is leaving McDonald's bags on their countertops.
Yeah.
It's on them if they want us to vacuum and deep clean their house every night. And so setting that expectation up front and then also calling them back to it at that time, like, hey, let's do a walk on what you think is unacceptable. I want to make sure we put our tools in the spot you want, but we didn't budget in our money to spend an hour a day to pack all the tools up and take them to the truck and haul them back to the office.
Yeah.
So if that's your expectation, you're not paying for that time spend, and I didn't capture that in the scope.
Yeah.
Right. And so at that point, when you're talking about they're going to pay more money for that, that's where it's like, oh, whoa, I'm not going to pay more money for you all to pack your tools up. Right. And so that's where you can start having those conversations.
That's right.
Again, relaunch meeting with all of those is setting up how you're okay with us moving forward. So can we have a staging area in your garage for our tools? Is that okay? Great. I'm going to tell the guys. I'm going to call a meeting on Monday. I'm going to show them the spot. And if we don't do that, I want you to call me, text me, let me know, and I will be over here to make sure that gets
working
done.
To figure out a solution together.
Yep. Number 4, the final conflict that we see. I mean, there's hundreds of conflicts. Yeah. And if you hear any, let us know some that you'd like us to cover. But a big one is usually happening towards the middle end of the job. And it is disagreement on scope, disagreement on price of an item, or disagreement at the end of the job on the results of what you did at the property.
Yeah.
Right? Or whether it's you're building them a home and they don't like how something was done, they don't like whatever it is, the results that they're not happy with, the scope that they thought you were going to do one thing and you did something else, or the price. They didn't realize picking that light fixture for $2,000 over budget was going to increase their cost by $2,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think that people that are contractors that make a bunch of changes and then send a large change order at the end of a job, they're going to run into this one all day.
Every time.
Every day.
The company out, I'm not going to call them out, but a company that we were coaching, that was their standard operation. We're just going to keep a list of everything that's different, and at the end of the job, I'm going to send you a CO, and the COs are $20,000.
Yeah.
And people are losing their minds,
Yep.
and they don't the company don't understand why they've got a bad reputation. And
Right.
it's like, well, everyone thinks you're doing the house for $100, and then at the end of the day, they've spent all of their extra cash on that $100, and now they owe you $120.
Yeah.
They're not going to be happy. They think you're a
Scam artist.
scam artist, and trying to get one over on them. So, scope and price, I am redefining in the moment. If there is a change on price, I am sending you a change order before I purchase that $2,000 light fixture.
Right.
Because if you didn't realize it, you might want that light fixture, but we're not doing granites anymore. On scope, if you say, hey, this line item says paint house, and you painted the inside of the house, but I thought the outside was getting paid in too, then that's a conversation.
Right.
Interior, exterior paint is this price. I only price it at this. If you look, it's in the section for interior work. I'm sorry that you thought that, and we got to have that conversation right now, because you thought you were getting something that I didn't define clear enough on the scope, or you didn't read on the scope. Hopefully, is the result. And then the last one, like we said, is having bad results. This goes along with the punch list, the 800 pieces of blue tape. But when they are unhappy with the final result, a lot of times, this is a great example. We finish a bathroom and they come in and say, hey, this tile, I can feel the corner of this tile sticking up here on the floor, and I need this pulled out and replaced. We all know a month after laying the tile, pulling it out, laying a new one, and putting new grout, you're going to see it. It's not going to fit right. It's not going to feel right. It's going to take forever, and they're not going to be happy. So this is where we go industry standard. The industry standard for a 1/4 inch grout line is 1/16 inch of lippage from one tile to the next. And if you look at this is within industry standard. Or what we've had to do, you're right, I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to lay the grout lines. You can't hold my money hostage. I'm going to let you hold $1,200 until I finish this, but everything else needs to get paid before we do this work. Right. And so we're going to figure out what's on the scope, what was the price that we originally quoted, what were we supposed to be doing, who signed off on what, and I'm going to fix it if I'm supposed to fix it. But I'm also going to call it industry standard.
Again, the goal is not proving who's right and wrong. The goal is a exit. To be able to close the job out and the client be in a good space. They may be a little agitated, but they're like, you know what? They handled it. They worked with me on this. I really would have liked them to demo all of it out and redo it, but they came in and they fixed it. It's better. I'm okay. You're working together to find a solution in that spot.
And there's some line of questioning when they're not happy with the result, to really help define if they're trying to just money grab at the end and paper cut you to death with some money, or if they really aren't happy with that result. Right? And so the question that I often ask is say, well, cool, I already paid my tile guy, so there's not like I can give you a discount, but I can have him replace it if this is an industry standard. Here's going to be the issue. It's going to take another week. We're going to do this, this, and this. Do you want to do that? We can do that. And then Norman's like, oh, why don't you just give me like $500 off and we'll call it. So you're fine with the way it looks. Well, no, I'm not fine with it. Okay, so we'll rip it out. Well, I don't want you to go in and rip it out. Just give me a discount. When they start talking like that, I'm going to stand my ground and say, no, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I've already paid the money. I don't have the money to discount. He already has it in his pocket. I can call him back to warranty it. And so we start going down that road, start trying to understand their intentions. And usually I'm going to give them a couple $100 just to make them happy, keep the reputation. But a $200 discount for a tile that's a little bit off center, for me, I'm fine with, because it's going to cost me 3 weeks and probably $800 out of my pocket to have my guy come back out, rip it out, get it fixed, all that sort of thing. So figuring out where I'm going to give, where I'm not going to give, what is industry standard, what is a little bit off, and trying to come to a conclusion there is the best. Now, when they call another tile guy to come in and quote, he's going to be like, well, it's $8,000 to replace that tile.
Yeah.
Right. And so for us, it's saying we're not going to listen to that.
Right.
You got a contract with us.
We told you what we will fix it for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're not going to come out until we come to a decision. But and they're like, great, I'm not going to pay you till you come back out. It's like, no problem. We'll put a lien on the property and we'll figure out how we're going to go forward.
Yeah. Well, and I think as we close out, there's a couple of things that I would say are the overarching things that I hope people get and walk away with. Obviously, there are a lot more things that happen on job sites than just what we talked about. But through all of these, if you don't previously have something in place to point back to for accountability of setting expectations, as you can see, the way that we went through to solve every one of these was pointing back that direction.
Yep.
Recalibrating expectations. Well, you can't recalibrate expectations if you didn't set them.
Yep.
Right? So that's a big point here, is that if you're having these issues, all the time and you're constantly having to battle with clients, that's because you haven't done a sufficient job of setting expectations on the front end. Right?
I think something that I would suggest doing too, especially if you're in a specific trade, to do that is, if I'm doing a heavy sheetrock job, I'm going to talk them through the 5 levels of sheetrock finishing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, this is the level that we quote, and this is how it's not 100% perfect. If you want to pay for that, it costs money to make it absolutely perfect to get to level 5, right? I'm going to start talking through what industry standards are for different things. And that way I'm setting their expectations that it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be really nice.
Right.
Right. And having those conversations up front at the CEA to where I can reference it back throughout the entire job.
Yeah. Well, and the last thing is, there is a skill set here that you have to learn and practice, which you and I have done together for years and with clients for years. And you've helped the GM to be able to kind of get into this mindset of being able to approach conversations that are confrontational like this from a calm, cool way, without going in of, I'm just going to be rolled over, I'm going to be taken advantage of. That's not what we're trying to do. Yeah. It's going in and setting the tone. Yep. Right? And that's a skill. Yeah. It's not just something that you can do. It is a skill that you learn over applying it over time. I would be really good at going in and just like, whatever the client wants is fine to make them happy. Yeah. Right? But that's not what we want. There is a amicable way that we want a space in the middle that we want to find, and you are the leader of this. Yeah. This is something that we talk about a lot when it comes to leadership, is that when you are the leader, it doesn't matter who's right and wrong. You are responsible for all of it. Yep. It doesn't matter if the client's being a nut. It doesn't matter if the client is unreasonable. You have done something wrong or incorrectly to cause them to get there. Yep. There's something that you can do, change, and apply to solve the situation. But if you go in and you find yourself pointing fingers at clients and subs and crews and vendors, and that's the problem, then the problem needs to be pointed at you, because in this job role, you are responsible for all of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the difference of playing chess and checkers, because the client wants to play checkers. They want to come in that conversation and they want to just bludgeon you with all the reasons why you're wrong. Yep. And the natural reaction is to play checkers with them, to go in and bludgeon them with all your weapons. And you've shot all of your weapons, and now you got no ammo left.
That's right.
And they haven't even heard it, and they haven't budged, because you're 2 people on your own hills not willing to move.
That's right.
If you go in as a negotiator, you play the chess game, and you say, "Oh, that happened? Okay, tell me more about that." "Oh, really? Okay, I didn't remember that, but let me take a note and come back to you." I can then take all of their issues, lower their guard, because I've heard them. They're being heard by someone, not just a wall of argument. And I'm going to take them back, and I'm going to knock their legs out one move at a time until I win the chess game. So I'm going to say, "Hey, actually, no, I wrote this down. You said that we didn't tell you that, but if you look at this email from September 4th, we sent you this and saying X, Y, and Z was going to happen. Right. I don't know if you missed it, but yeah, that's that one. The other issue that you had with us is X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah." And so I can calmly and assertively take all of their ammo and disarm it. Yep. As opposed to going in and trying to bludgeon them to get my way and tell them why they don't deserve having a good contractor like me on their house.
And again, not so that I can be right.
Yeah.
My goal is to exit with profit.
Yep.
Right? That's the goal,
Yep.
is to exit with profit. I think the last thing is that there is a very rare occasion, but there are some times where no matter what you do, it's never going to be solved,
Yep.
and you've got to exit,
Yep.
right? And that's where you need a exit document that spells that out, no defamation of character or company,
Yep.
and all of that stuff. But very rarely, I think we've had to do that. Maybe once or twice. It was very, very rare that we've had to do that.
And all of those, I think one that I can remember was like $2,800 left on the job because
Yeah.
we invoice weekly.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Let's just walk.
Yeah.
Let's walk from this. Let's tell them we're willing to do this. If you don't want to do that, we can cancel the contract at this point, and you can just take the rest of that money and finish this job
Yeah.
yourself. We, these are your options. We
Yeah.
give them the options that we're willing to do, and we're not going to come back out till they agree to one.
And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of contractors out there that it's almost a default.
Yeah.
Like if it gets too difficult, I'm just out.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna deal with any shenanigans.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to lean into the hard and deal with it. Those are the things that develop your company, and help you grow into the next level. So.
Thanks for listening. Sorry it's such a long
Yeah.
podcast, but
So-
it was a big topic that we wanted to cover. If you want to get on our software, have conversations with us, come to one of our events, ProStruck360.com. Contact us there. We'd love to talk with you, have any conversation. We don't charge for one-off consults. We just want to engage and help where we can.
Yeah.
So feel free to contact us. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next podcast.
See you later.
Night.